I remembered the cold first. Not the kind that chills your skin, the kind that crawls inside your bones and tells you you're completely alone in the world. That night, I was lying on the hard ground outside the mansion gate. Yes, that mansion, the one people only see from a distance because it's guarded like a kingdom. Funny, right? A place with 50 rooms and a private lake. And there I was, curled up outside like a stray dog. But before you judge me, before you think I'm exaggerating, let me tell you something. Nobody ends up outside a mansion gate unless something very dark pushed them there. And trust me, mine wasn't just dark, it was deadly. The rain kept hitting my face as if the sky itself was telling me to get up and leave, but I couldn't. Not after what I had discovered, not after what they did to me. My fingers were numb, my throat dry, and every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the same moment over and over. The secret they tried to bury, the secret they thought would break me. Maybe I should have been afraid. Maybe I should have run. But I stayed. I stayed because I wanted the truth more than I wanted warmth. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, controlled. The kind of steps you don't forget. I thought the guard had come to drag me away again, but no. The iron gate creaked, and when I looked up, he was standing there. The CEO. The man everyone fears to upset, the man who could ruin lives with a phone call. And yet, he looked at me like he had just found something he had lost years ago. Rain dripping off his coat, eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Then he stepped closer, knelt down, and whispered, "Welcome home." Home. A word no one had ever used for me without a lie attached to it. A word that felt warm and cruel at the same time. And you're probably wondering, why would a man like him open his mansion door to someone like me? What was I doing outside in the first place? And what exactly did he mean by home? Oh, trust me, the story is deeper, darker, and far more twisted than you think. But before we go any further, if you're already feeling the chills in your spine, hit that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you might just change the way you look at family, loyalty, and power forever. Now, let me tell you who I really am. My name, well, the one they used to call me, doesn't matter anymore. It was never really mine to begin with, but since you're here, listening, and since I've already dragged you into the cold with me, let me tell you the part nobody ever cared to hear. I wasn't born into wealth, power, or privilege. I wasn't even born into love. I grew up believing I was just another unwanted face in a long, crowded world, a kid shuffled between places that smelled like old blankets and broken promises. Funny how life works, though. The people behind that mansion gate, the ones who pretended not to see me lying there, they once told me I didn't belong anywhere near them. They looked at me like I was a mistake someone forgot to erase. And for years, I believed them. I worked small jobs, kept my head down, told myself not to dream too big because dreams were for people who mattered. But deep inside, something kept pulling me back to that mansion, like a thread tied from my chest to its front doors, like I was connected to it somehow, even though I didn't understand why. And trust me, I tried to ignore it. I tried to live quietly, safely. But life doesn't stay quiet when it wants to reveal the truth. You ever feel that? That strange, uncomfortable pull that whispers, "You're meant to know more." That whisper dragged me back into the world of secrets I didn't even know were mine. And if you think sleeping outside a mansion gate is the worst thing that's happened to me, wait. You have no idea who pushed me out, who kept me in the dark, or why they were so afraid of me discovering the truth. But now that we started, I might as well take you with me step by step, because once you hear what really happened, you won't forget it. The Mansion family, people like to imagine wealth makes folks kinder, softer, more generous. Let me tell you something honest. Money doesn't change people, it just shows who they really are when no one is watching. And inside that mansion, behind those tall white pillars and polished marble floors, lived a family that looked perfect from far away. But up close, they were rotten in ways I didn't even know a human heart could rot. The mother was the kind of woman whose smile felt like a blade wrapped in silk, soft on the outside, sharp enough to cut you before you realized you were bleeding. She spoke gently in public, but when doors closed, her voice could freeze a room, the kind of cold that makes you doubt your own worth. The siblings? They were worse. One carried pride like a crown. The other carried jealousy like a disease. Every time they looked at me, it was with that expression rich people use when they see something beneath them, something they'd never let touch their carpets. And the strange part is, they didn't hate me for what I did. They hated me for what I was, for something I didn't even know yet. They made sure I always felt like an outsider, someone who didn't belong anywhere, someone who should have stayed far away. And every time I stepped near that mansion, I felt their eyes on me, watching, calculating, waiting for me to make one wrong move so they could push me back into the shadows where they thought I belonged. But here's the part that still unsettles me. The deeper I looked into their faces, the more I felt something familiar, something that tied me to them in a way I couldn't explain. Like we shared a history nobody wanted to talk about. Like we shared a truth they were desperate to bury. And I didn't understand why a family so powerful, so wealthy, so perfect-looking was terrified of someone like me. I didn't know it then, but that fear would be the key that unlocked everything they tried to hide. I first met him on a rainy afternoon, the kind of rain that soaks you through and makes the world feel smaller, colder, and somehow heavier. I had no umbrella, no place to go, and I was running from something I didn't fully understand yet. Fear, shame, the constant feeling of being invisible. And then I saw him, the CEO, the man everyone whispered about in the city, the one whose name could open doors, close businesses, or ruin reputations with a single sentence. And funny thing is, he didn't look intimidating at first. Not really. He looked human, kind in a way that made me uncomfortable. He offered me a hand when I was slipping in the mud, and instead of scolding me for being careless, he asked a simple question. "Why are you out here alone?" I wanted to run, to hide, because that question, it wasn't supposed to be asked by someone like him, someone with power, someone who had everything. But there was a softness in his eyes that made it hard to lie. So I told him bits of my truth, pieces of a life that had been full of rejection, loneliness, and unanswered questions. And instead of judging, he listened, really listened. That was the moment I realized something I hadn't before. He wasn't like the rest of them. Not the mother, not the siblings, not the people who pushed me to the edge. He was different. And that difference, it gave me hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, someone could see me for more than the mistakes and misfortunes that had defined me for so long. But little did I know, meeting him was the start of a chain of events that would pull me closer to the mansion and into the heart of secrets I wasn't yet ready to face. The secret? The secret was the kind of thing that makes your stomach twist and your heart pound like it's trying to escape. I didn't know it at first, not fully. I just felt it, like a shadow lurking behind every smile, every polite word, every gesture of kindness that had a hidden edge. Then I stumbled upon it by accident, as people often do with the truths that weren't meant for them. A folder, tucked away in a drawer that no one ever opened. Documents, letters, photographs, evidence of things I couldn't believe. They weren't just trying to keep me out of the mansion, they were trying to erase me. Erase who I really was, my name, my birth, my connection to that family, all hidden, all rewritten as if I had never existed, and every piece I found made my blood run colder. Why? Because the people I thought I might have a right to trust, my own blood, in a sense, had been working against me all along, lying, hiding, plotting. And as I read each page, piecing together fragments of my past, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just an outsider. I was a threat. And not the kind they could ignore, the kind that could change everything if I found my voice. That's when the fear hit me, sharp and immediate like a whip across my back. But with fear came something else. determination. If they thought I would stay in the shadows, forgotten, discarded, they were wrong, dead wrong. And it was that moment, the moment I understood how deep the lies went, that I knew sleeping outside a mansion gate was no longer just desperation. It was the first act in taking back what was mine. The betrayal didn't come softly. It wasn't a quiet push or a gentle hint to leave. It hit me like a storm, loud, sudden, and meant to destroy me completely. One moment, I was standing inside the mansion's hallway, holding the documents that proved everything they'd hidden from me, and the next, the mother's voice sliced through the air like broken glass. She called me a liar, a thief, an intruder. And before I could even defend myself, the siblings closed in, their faces twisted with the kind of anger that comes from fear. Fear of losing control, fear of losing power, fear of me. They grabbed my bag, tore it from my shoulder, dumped everything onto the marble floor as if my life was trash they needed to sweep away. Every truth I had held in my hands was snatched, burned, or locked away. And then came the part I'll never forget. The front door swung open and they dragged me out. No hesitation, no shame. They didn't care who watched. They didn't care how much it hurt. The mother leaned close, her voice cold enough to kill warmth itself, and whispered, "You will never be one of us. You were never meant to be here." Then the doors slammed in my face, leaving me out in the dark like I was nothing. And maybe the cruelest part? The CEO wasn't there. He didn't see them tear me apart. He didn't hear them rewrite my story with their venom. He didn't stop them when they threw me out like I never mattered. I stood there shaking, heart racing, realizing something painful and sharp. They weren't just trying to keep me out. They were trying to break me so completely that I'd never dare to come back. But they underestimated me. Because betrayal doesn't weaken everyone. Sometimes it wakes something inside you, something they never wanted you to find. That night felt endless, like time itself wanted to watch me suffer. The ground outside the mansion was cold enough to make my teeth shake, and the wind kept cutting through my clothes as if it had a personal grudge against me. Every time I shifted, the gravel dug into my skin, reminding me exactly where I stood, outside, a world that was supposed to be mine, barred out by people who feared the truth more than they feared God. I could have walked away. I could have found a shelter, a bench, a corner, somewhere in the city where no one knew my name. But I didn't. I stayed. Because leaving meant giving them what they wanted. My silence, my disappearance, my surrender. And I wasn't ready to give them that satisfaction. So I curled up near the gate, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to fight the ache in my bones and the burn in my throat. Hunger hit first, then the loneliness. The kind that makes you question your worth. The kind that whispers, maybe they were right about you. But then another voice pushed through, the voice that had guided me my whole life, the one that refused to die no matter how much people tried to crush it. If this place holds your truth, you don't walk away from it. So I stayed. Hours passed. The sky shifted from black to gray to a dull, bruised blue. I watched lights turn on inside the mansion, heard laughter echo behind the glass windows, saw silhouettes moving freely in the warmth I had been denied. And still, I waited. Because deep down I knew the night wasn't over. Something was coming. Something was going to break the silence. And when I finally heard those approaching footsteps, slow, steady, unmistakable, I felt the air shift around me. My heartbeat quickened. My breath froze. The moment I had been waiting for, and fearing, had finally arrived. Then I saw him. The car pulled up quietly, but even through the rain and darkness, I recognized him, the CEO, the man whose name everyone whispered with a mix of fear and respect, the man who could crush lives with a single decision. And yet here he was, stepping out of that sleek black car, rain dripping from his coat, his gaze locking on me like he had been searching for me all along. My first thought was, why now? Why show up after everything they'd done? And as he walked closer, I realized his eyes weren't cold like the rest of the family.
No, there was something different there. Recognition, concern, a flicker of something I hadn't expected. "Who did this to you?" His voice broke through the night, sharp but quiet, like he was angry enough to demand answers, but gentle enough not to terrify me further. And in that moment, all the fear, all the hunger, all the cold, it didn't matter as much. Because here was someone who saw me, really saw me, and wasn't judging me for lying, for struggling, for being me. He held out his hand, but I didn't reach for it, not yet. I had to know, why had he stayed away until now? Was it luck that brought him back, or had he known all along what was happening behind those gates? And then, when I finally looked into his eyes, he whispered, "Welcome home." Just 2 words, but they landed like a thunderclap in my chest. Home. A word I hadn't heard directed at me since, well, ever. And suddenly all the questions, all the betrayals, all the lies, they weren't just things that happened to me anymore. They were a puzzle, and he was the first person who could help me solve it. We didn't waste time. The doors of the mansion swung open, and for the first time I walked inside not as an outsider, not as someone pushed aside, but with him by my side, the CEO. The family froze. Their smiles, their polished manners, their carefully rehearsed calm, it all cracked the moment he stepped in. The mother's eyes narrowed, the siblings stiffened, and I could feel the tension crackle like electricity in the air. He didn't shout, he didn't scream, he didn't need to. His presence alone demanded attention, and suddenly they were all on the defensive. "Explain," he said, his voice low but lethal, eyes scanning each of them like a judge ready to pass sentence. And then it happened. They spilled. Lies, excuses, twisted versions of truth meant to bury me forever. They tried to justify throwing me out, hiding my identity, destroying my chance at anything that was mine by right. But he didn't let them off the hook. Every lie was met with calm but piercing questions, every excuse dismantled with quiet authority. And all the while I watched. I watched the people who had tried to erase me crumble under the weight of their own deceit. It was surreal, terrifying, intoxicating. For the first time, I wasn't the one trembling. They were. And the more I heard, the more I realized just how deep the fear ran. Not mine, theirs. They weren't afraid of me, they were afraid of the truth I carried. And with him standing there supporting me silently, I understood something I hadn't before. Power wasn't about wealth. It wasn't about the mansion or the reputation or the titles. Power was knowing the truth and daring to stand with it, even when everyone else tried to bury it. And then the truth came out, not in whispers, not in half-truths or hints, but in full, undeniable clarity. Papers, photos, birth certificates, all the proof that had been hidden from me, locked away in drawers and filing cabinets, were finally laid bare. I learned who I really was, and it wasn't just shocking, it was earth-shattering. I was not just a distant relative, not just a random name on some family tree. I was the rightful heir, the one they had tried to erase, the one they feared could undo everything they'd built. My heart pounded as the reality hit me. All those years of cold stares, cruel words, and being thrown out, it wasn't because I didn't belong, it was because I did. Too much. And they had tried to silence that truth, to rewrite history in their favor. The mother's face went pale, her carefully constructed world crumbling before her eyes. The siblings shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet mine. And me? I felt a rush of anger, relief, fear, and something else. Power. Not the kind you buy, not the kind that comes with a title, but the kind that comes from knowing the truth and finally having it in your hands. All the humiliation, all the nights spent shivering outside the gate, all the lies, they suddenly had a purpose. They had led me here, to this moment, standing tall in the place I was always meant to be. And as I looked at the CEO, standing quietly beside me, I realized him. He knew. Maybe not the full story at first, but he had known enough to wait, to let me find my way, and to finally help me claim what was mine. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again.
It hit me all at once. The weight of everything I had endured. The years of being unseen, unwanted and underestimated. My knees weakened, my chest felt tight, and for the first time in my life I allowed myself to cry openly, not caring who saw. All the nights shivering outside that gate, the hunger, the fear, the whispers of lies, they all came rushing back like a flood I couldn't stop. I realized how much I had carried alone, how much pain had been packed into every step I had taken toward that mansion. And yet, alongside the pain, there was something else. A strange, overwhelming sense of relief, like I had finally landed on solid ground after years of walking on broken glass. The CEO didn't rush to comfort me, he just stayed there, silently strong, letting me process, letting me own every ounce of my fear and my anger. And I couldn't help but notice the family shrinking under the weight of their own deceit, realizing that I had survived, that I had seen the truth, and that nothing they had done could erase me anymore. I wanted to scream, to laugh, to cry all at once. I wanted them to feel the emptiness, the terror, the despair that they had caused me. But most of all, I wanted to breathe, finally. And as the tears fell and my body shook, I knew something vital. Surviving wasn't enough. I had to take the next step. I had to reclaim the life, the identity, the home that had always been mine. And in that fragile, trembling moment, I realized just how close I was to turning my pain into power. Standing there, I felt the weight of every decision I had ever been forced to make pressing down on me. The mansion was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of everything I had lost, everything I had been denied, and everything I was finally about to claim. The family, trembling and desperate, begged, pleaded, trying to manipulate me with lies and excuses, but the words felt hollow now. I looked at the CEO, quietly watching, waiting for me to decide. He didn't push me, didn't tell me what to do. He let me choose. And that choice, it wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave behind the pain, the betrayal, the nights of loneliness. Another part screamed to stay, to take what was mine by right, to face the people who tried to erase me and prove that I belonged, always had, and always would. I remembered the cold stone under me, the wind cutting through my clothes, the fear of being invisible. And suddenly the answer became clear. I wasn't staying just for me. I was staying for every lie they had tried to bury, for every night I had spent wondering if I mattered. I stepped forward, calm but unwavering. And with him by my side, I entered the mansion not as a visitor, not as a beggar, but as someone claiming her place. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power, dignity, and a strange, fierce joy. They had tried to push me out, but I had chosen to come in on my own terms. And that choice, that decision, would change everything. Just when I thought the story had reached its peak, the final twist hit me like lightning. As the family tried to regroup, to salvage some control, the CEO turned to me with a look I didn't expect. Soft, almost playful, but heavy with meaning. "There's one more thing you need to know," he said, and my stomach sank. He revealed that not only was I the rightful heir, but there had been someone quietly helping me all along. Someone inside the mansion who had risked everything to make sure I survived, to make sure I could reclaim my place. A family member, yes, but one whose loyalty no one had suspected. They had left breadcrumbs, hints, protections, waiting for the moment I was strong enough to see them. I realized then that the game, the manipulation, the betrayal, it wasn't just about power or wealth. It was a test I hadn't known I was taking. And now, standing there, finally seeing the truth in full,
I understood that everything, the nights outside the gate, the fear, the hunger, the pain, had led me here. Not just to survive, but to rise. To claim the home that was always mine and to step into a story far more complicated, far more human than I could ever have imagined. The mansion, the family, the secrets, they were no longer chains. They were proof of my strength, my resilience, and the fact that sometimes the person who opens a door isn't just offering you shelter, they're offering you destiny. If there's one thing I want you to take from all of this, it's this. Life will push you out, ignore you, and try to convince you that you don't belong. People will lie, cheat, and betray you, but none of that has the power to define you unless you let it. The nights I spent shivering outside that mansion, the fear, the loneliness, they weren't the end of my story. They were the beginning of reclaiming it. Sometimes the people who shut doors on you are simply afraid of what you might discover, and sometimes the person who opens a door isn't just giving you shelter. They're giving you the chance to become who you were always meant to be. I stand here now, inside that mansion, not because they let me in, but because I refuse to stay out. And if my story teaches you anything, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of persistence, courage, and knowing your own worth. Because the world may try to push you down, but only you can decide if you rise. And rise we must, because the truth, our identity, and our strength are more worth than any fear. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it made your heart race, made you feel a spark of justice, or reminded you of the power in standing up for yourself, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss what comes next. Because the story isn't over, and neither is your fight.